What if I told you, the moment you clicked this video, something in heaven shifted? I'm not here to hype you up with cliches or quick fixes. I'm here to tell you the truth. Your story isn't stuck. And what you're about to hear might be the moment you realize God was never silent. He was preparing something. This message isn't random. It found you right when you needed it most. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, something deep inside you is going to remember who you really are. You didn't find this message. This message found you, and that changes everything. There is something strangely sacred about what you're experiencing right now. A pull, a pause, a subtle intensity in your chest, as if something just tapped your soul on the shoulder and whispered, "Pay attention." You're not even sure why you clicked, or maybe you do. Maybe life has worn thin lately, and you're looking for any hint of meaning in the mess. But here you are. And what if I told you that this moment was not just timely, but divinely timed? What if this is not a coincidence at all, but a signal? You may not remember the exact moment when the unraveling began. Maybe it started quietly like fog, settling over a familiar path, obscuring your sense of direction. Or maybe it was violent, a rupture, something precious cracking inside you without warning. Either way, the question isn't how you got here. The question is why now? Why this message? Why this moment? Because God sees you, not the version you show others, not the one dressed in composure and practiced answers, but the version of you that wakes up tired, that quietly wonders if things will ever fully make sense, that holds together 1,000 worries while still showing up for others. That version, the unfiltered one, is the one this message is reaching for. And here's what God says to you right now. If you found this, you passed. Not because you were flawless, not because you had all the answers, but because you kept going. Because even when your faith flickered so low you could hardly feel it, you didn't walk away. Because you paused here at this exact second and dared to hope that these words were meant for you. They are. There's something no one told you about divine testing. It doesn't always come in big storms or dramatic trials. Sometimes the test is the ordinary Tuesday, the silence after a disappointment, the small decision to be kind when no one will know. Sometimes the test is simply not quitting, even though everything inside you is begging for escape. And sometimes the test is hidden inside a voice like this one, speaking directly to your soul and asking, will you trust that this moment was prepared for you? You see, when God said, if you found this, you passed, He wasn't handing you a trophy. He was opening a door. This isn't the end of the story. This is the threshold. And on the other side, a version of your life you never imagined was possible, not because everything changes at once, but because you are changing. God has been preparing you for this shift for longer than you realize. Long before you knew what was breaking, He saw what would rise from it. He saw the quiet endurance you built in the dark, the nights you cried without answers, the strength you doubted you had. None of it was wasted. In fact, those hidden moments were the very soil in which your next chapter is being grown. You don't need to see the entire path. You only need to recognize this one step and take it. But make no mistake, what's coming is different. You've passed through a season where much was removed, stripped, and questioned, where identities felt uncertain and dreams seemed delayed. That wasn't punishment, that was pruning. God cuts away what can no longer carry the weight of your future. And now, the timing is aligned. This message is your confirmation. You're no longer just surviving the unknown, you're stepping into it with purpose. What once felt like a breakdown is actually the beginning of becoming. So here's the mystery of this moment. The test wasn't to prove something to God. It was to reveal something to you, to let you witness what remains when everything else fades, to let you see that even your cracked places still carry His fingerprints, that even in silence He was not absent. Now He speaks not through thunder, but through clarity. You passed because you stayed open. You passed because you didn't quit love. You passed because when others numbed out, you chose to feel. You passed because you returned to me even if crawling. And you might think, but I've messed up. I've fallen so many times. Let me tell you something powerful. Falling never disqualified you. Giving up on yourself almost did, but you didn't. And that's why you're here. There's a word in this moment for the part of you that feels overlooked, the part that's tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of starting over. God sees that part. He doesn't look away from it. He kneels beside it. He reminds you that your delays have not erased your design. What if your greatest breakthrough is on the other side of the stillness? God doesn't operate on human timelines. He's not late. He's intentional. And everything he does begins with a whisper, the kind of whisper you're hearing right now, not with your ears, but with something deeper, a holy nudge that bypasses intellect and speaks directly to your spirit. You don't need to earn this moment. You need only to receive it. So pause, listen, breathe. Let the truth sink in. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken beyond repair. You are exactly where you need to be to receive what's next. And now that you've been reminded of this, you cannot go back to pretending you weren't called. Something was stirred. It may be quiet, but it is powerful. And it will keep growing. This isn't hype. This is heaven. There are people you are meant to impact with your very presence. Not because you're loud, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And real carries weight. You've passed the test not just for yourself, but for those watching you live. For those who will catch courage just by being near your peace. For those who thought it was too late until they saw your quiet rise. You don't have to feel ready. You only have to be willing. Willing to believe this isn't just a nice message. It's a divine encounter, a turning point. So what now? Now you keep showing up. Now you let the past be past. Now you start living from the truth that something eternal has already been placed within you. You start trusting that the journey ahead isn't about scrambling to prove your worth. It's about walking out what has already been spoken over you. This isn't the beginning of hope. This is what hope becomes when it matures into conviction. So take this seriously. Take yourself seriously. You didn't click by mistake. You were led here. You were seen. You were whispered to. And heaven is saying, if you found this, you passed. Which speaks to you more deeply right now, A. I feel something changing in me even if I can't name it yet. B. I still feel unsure, but I want to believe this message is for me. Comment below with your answer, A or B, and speak your truth into the space. It might be the very first step forward. It's tempting to believe you've fallen behind, especially when others seem to be sprinting ahead, building, achieving, living loudly. You scroll, you listen, you compare. Somewhere inside that whisper returns. You should be further by now, and it doesn't just echo in your ears. It settles into your chest, a quiet disappointment you carry like luggage, with no clear destination. But today, God is writing a new truth into your story. One you may not have considered. You are not behind. You are being repositioned. Let that sink in. What feels like stagnation is actually sacred preparation. What looks like delay from the outside may be God designing an entirely new route that your old map could never show you. Sometimes the path you thought was the way had to be rerouted, not because you failed, but because it could no longer carry the weight of what's coming. In the small mountain town of Leora, the same place your last shift began, you once stood at the edge of clarity. The winding trail through your career, your relationships, even your self-understanding started to fracture. You prayed for direction, but it felt like heaven went silent. You waited for signs. They didn't come. And in that in-between space, the question formed. Had you missed your moment? No. You hadn't missed it. You were being moved into alignment. Not the alignment of ambition, but of purpose. And purpose rarely shouts. It whispers. It moves like roots beneath the soil, slow, deep, persistent. While others were gathering attention, you were growing character. While others were rushing ahead, you were being rerouted, yes, but also reformed. There's something holy about the hidden years. The years where you showed up without applause. The years you carried disappointment like a backpack, but still poured out compassion on those around you. That season wasn't wasted. It was sacred ground. Heaven was tracking every unseen movement, every quiet yes you gave, while wondering if any of it mattered. God doesn't measure progress the way the world does. While the world tallies promotions, followers, and visibility, heaven looks for something far more enduring: depth. And Leora became the forge of your depth. It was there you learned to hear God in silence. It was there you felt stripped only to discover you were actually being refined. Being repositioned means you don't have to chase. It means you're being placed. Let that shift your soul. You are being placed. And placed things don't hustle for space. They settle. They root. They bloom in season. And you, beloved, are stepping into your season, Not late, not early, but exactly on divine time. You know the feeling of being left out, of hearing not yet too many times. You've been overlooked by people who couldn't see the weight you were carrying internally. You've smiled when others got the breakthrough you prayed for. You've blessed others while your own heart broke quietly. But all of that was preparation, not punishment. Preparation to hold what's next. Because what's coming isn't just about you. It's about who you'll lift, lead, and love from this healed space. Repositioning often requires removal. Certain relationships had to go silent. Certain doors had to shut. Not because they were evil, but because they had finished their assignment. It's easy to mourn what's been lost, harder to trust what's coming. But trust is the bridge between here and what God is building. And trust requires perspective. From the high ridge just beyond the cedar line in Leora, you once stood and looked across the valley. You thought the mountains in the distance were the goal. You even charted how you'd get there. But life didn't follow your map. Instead, it rerouted you through the forest. The shadows were longer, the terrain unfamiliar. But what you didn't know then is what you can start to see now. The forest taught you how to walk by faith, not just by plan. Sometimes the setbacks were divinely orchestrated pauses. They protected you from rushing into situations that looked bright but would have burned you. God sees beyond the curve, around the hill, beneath the soil. He knows what's truly for your good, not just your immediate gratification. This is the mystery of divine repositioning. It often feels like standing still while heaven is at work rearranging the unseen. God has not forgotten your prayers. In fact, He's answering them now in ways you couldn't have designed and through paths you never expected. You're longing to be used, to feel aligned, to experience peace that doesn't vanish. These are being answered in this very stretch. You are not stuck. You are being shifted. And shifting always feels strange at first, because the old rhythms don't quite fit, but the new ones haven't settled yet. You're in between chapters, and the temptation is to rush the turn of the page. But don't. There is glory in this pause. There is wisdom to be absorbed here that will serve you for decades to come. God is repositioning your identity too. You no longer need to define yourself by what you lost or what didn't happen. You are not your missed opportunities. You are not your lowest moments. You are not the silent years when no one noticed. You are God still becoming, still unfolding. And when the new door opens, and it will, you'll walk through not as someone hungry for validation, but as someone anchored. The door won't define you. It will simply reveal you. So many are building platforms. You are being built as a person. And in the end, people last longer than platforms. Now take a moment. Look at where you are. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Leora may be quiet now, but it's the stillness before the surge. You've been repotted and new roots are forming. The container you once outgrew was never the failure. It was just a season, a chapter. The next chapter is being written even now, and you are not behind. To anchor this truth deeper, try this. Write a letter from your future self. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, standing in peace and purpose, looking back at this very season. What would that version of you say? What would they thank you for enduring? What wisdom would they offer? What surprises came from what once felt like a dead end? When you write it, you may discover something stunning. The version of you in the future is not waiting to become. It's being formed right here in the repositioning. This is not a detour, it's direction. This is not a delay, it's design. This is not the end. It's a divine rerouting into exactly where you were always meant to be. You are not behind, you are being placed. And where God places you, no one can displace you. Hold that truth, guard it. Return to it when the waiting feels long or the silence grows thick. Let it remind you every chapter you feared was wasted has been folded into a future that makes more sense than you ever dreamed. This is how God works, quietly, faithfully, on time. So the next time your heart says, I should be further, let your spirit respond with boldness. I'm right where I need to be for what heaven is preparing next. And that is more than enough. Would you like to respond and go deeper? You don't need a certificate to prove you've grown. Your growth is not written in degrees or headlines. It is stitched into the quiet decisions you've made when no one saw, when no one clapped, and when even you wondered if it mattered. But heaven saw. Every act of forgiveness when bitterness seemed more natural. Every late-night prayer when you felt like no one was listening. Every silent battle with doubt where you chose even just barely to hold on. These were tests the kind heaven counts as sacred, and you've passed more than you know. Because here's the truth, the real tests of life often come disguised. They rarely arrive with fanfare or clear instructions. They sneak in through routine frustrations, relational tensions, silent nights and slow mornings. They come when expectations fall through, and nobody seems to notice how hard you're trying. They come when you're in Leora in the slow stillness of what feels like spiritual obscurity, wondering if your story has drifted into insignificance. But let this truth reach you where doubt still lingers. You have already passed many of the hardest tests life could give. You passed the test of staying tender when cynicism tried to win. You passed the test of showing up again and again when you felt empty. You passed the test of not giving in to the easier, colder version of yourself. Not because you were strong every day, no. Some days you were barely standing, but you didn't leave. You didn't harden. You stayed soft. You kept returning to the heart of it all, even when your hope limped. God never needed you to be impressive. He just asked you to be willing, and in that willingness, you showed heaven what obedience really looks like. In the small, unseen valley just outside Leora, there's a little wooden bridge you used to cross. It's worn from years of rain and time, yet it still holds. That bridge became a symbol, your symbol, for what it means to keep walking, even when the path beneath you creaks with uncertainty. You never collapsed. You never gave up. You passed. And here's the irony of it all. Most people don't realize that some of the most important moments in life never go viral, never trend, and never make it into memory books. They're the moments when you chose peace instead of revenge, when you turned off the noise and listened for God, when you didn't retaliate with sarcasm, when you walked away rather than proved a point, when you spoke truth quietly instead of shouting to be right. All of that counts. Every one of those decisions added up. They form the backbone of who you are now becoming. And still you may be wondering, but what has it all been for? What do I have to show for it? Let me answer with this. You have a soul that can hold peace. That alone is a miracle. That alone is the fruit of the test you passed. You have resilience that's not built on applause but on conviction. You have wisdom that was carved in the valley, not bought in a course. You have integrity that didn't crack under pressure. You didn't just survive the storm, you stayed kind in it. That's not ordinary, that's supernatural endurance. And that is what heaven celebrates. Think back. Remember that moment in Leora last year when you sat alone in the back corner of your favorite little coffee shop, the rain falling heavy outside the window, and your thoughts felt too loud to manage. You were overwhelmed. Everything felt fragile. You wanted to run, but you didn't. You ordered your drink. You took a breath. You whispered one of the most powerful prayers you've ever spoken. God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm still here. Please lead me. That was a passing moment, in both senses of the word. You passed through it, and in doing so, you passed a test. Because the tests aren't about perfection, they're about presence, the choice to stay when it would be easier to disappear, the willingness to remain available to truth even when it feels costly. The world doesn't hand out medals for this kind of courage, but God keeps a record. He sees it all. He honors it all. And now those small sacred choices are starting to bear fruit. Your heart is stronger now. You know how to return to center faster. You can discern peace from pressure. You've developed a spiritual intuition that alerts you to what drains your spirit and what restores it. That's not small. That's the evidence of transformation. It means the foundation has been laid, quietly, steadily, and now the building can begin, because the house of your future can't be built on shaky values. God needed to test what would last, and you proved over and over that you can be trusted with more, not just because you're talented, but because you're faithful. Because you didn't sell your soul for quick success or shallow approval. You waited, you wept, you walked forward anyway. That's the essence of spiritual maturity, not how loud your worship is, but how deep your roots go when the storm comes. In yours, they go deep now. This is why you're ready. You're not ready because life has finally gotten easier. You're ready because you're no longer searching for identity and ease. You've become someone who can hold blessing with humility, who can steward opportunity with integrity, who can influence without needing to be idolized. You've passed the tests of anonymity, the tests of misunderstanding, the tests of staying unseen, and now it's time to recognize the value of everything you've already survived. To stop discounting the days that felt small, because in heaven's economy, no effort rooted in love is ever wasted. To honor this, here's a practice for your spirit. Create a victory jar. Each day this week, write down one victory you've had that no one else saw. A moment of restraint, a moment of wisdom, a moment of kindness, a moment you stayed grounded. Fold the paper and drop it in the jar. At the end of the week, read them back. You'll be amazed. You'll remember that these quiet victories are shaping the version of you who's now stepping into new assignments. You'll see proof that your hidden years weren't just about waiting, they were about becoming. And now that becoming is beginning to show. So let this be said with full confidence. You're not broken trying to get better. You're healed enough to go forward. And going forward doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means integrating it, letting the lessons walk with you, letting the beauty rise from the ash, not in dramatic fanfare, but in sacred steadiness. This is not just inspiration, it's invitation. Heaven is not just cheering for you, it's partnering with you. You're not doing this alone. So the next time you doubt if you've passed the test, remember this. You're still here, still loving, still listening, still becoming. That is enough. Which describes your quiet victories. Best A, I've made peace with battles no one else knew I was fighting. B, I'm just beginning to realize that the silent moments held the real tests. Comment your answer A or B and affirm the truth that your progress is real, even if it wasn't loud. You've passed through fire, through silence, through the valley of the unseen, and here you are, still breathing, still open, still reaching. That alone is a miracle. But now something deeper is stirring. It's subtle, like the early rustle of autumn in the trees of Leora before any leaves fall. Like the moment you step outside in the morning and notice the air has shifted, even if you can't explain how. Something in your spirit recognizes the rhythm is changing. You're no longer being tested, you're being invited. Not into performance, not into pressure, but into presence. This is the part no one talks about enough, how to actually live with God beyond the mountaintop moments, beyond the breakthroughs, beyond the desperate cries. How to weave heaven into the daily rhythm, how to experience God's nearness in the ordinary pulse of life. Because the truth is, God doesn't want weekend visits. He's not a consultant for your spiritual emergencies. He is the companion of your soul, your everyday moment-by-moment presence. And He's inviting you to move with Him, not just toward Him. That begins with rhythm. For too long, your schedule has shaped your spirit. Now it's time for your spirit to shape your schedule. In the quiet of Leora, where the mountains hush the noise of the outside world, you've started to notice what your soul actually needs. You're no longer chasing distraction to escape yourself. Instead, you're learning how to sit with yourself in sacred attention, and even more, to sit with God. But how does this look in real life? Not in theory, not in lofty promises, but in the Monday morning mess, the emails, the fatigue, the everydayness of it all. It begins with claiming small spaces of stillness. Even 5 minutes in the morning before the hum of tasks takes over can anchor your soul. This is not about checking off a box on a religious list. This is about returning to your source, your center, before the demands of the world scatter your focus. God doesn't require polish. He requires presence. You could wake up tomorrow, eyes half open, and whisper, "God, I'm here." Before anything else, "I'm with you." That alone becomes a sanctuary. And from that space, rhythm begins to form. You don't need a massive overhaul. You need consistent connection. Try this. Design a God hour each week. One intentional hour where you shut down the digital noise, step away from obligation, and engage with God in whatever way stirs your spirit. Maybe it's walking through the pines behind the cottage in Leora, letting each step become a prayer. Maybe it's writing what you feel, even if it's messy. Maybe it's singing softly, or even just sitting in silence and listening. Whatever it is, it becomes your offering. Not of duty, but of desire. Because that's what God is after, your heart, not your performance. And from there, your daily choices begin to shift. Instead of rushing from task to task, you start asking, what's the pace of peace today? Instead of being dragged by the tyranny of productivity, you begin to be led by presence. You notice more. The way light hits your coffee mug in the morning becomes a glimpse of beauty. The conversation with your neighbor becomes a holy interaction, not just casual small talk. The sigh you exhale at the end of a long day becomes a prayer. You were with me in it all. The reason this rhythm matters isn't because it makes life easier. It's because it makes life clearer. When you live with God at the center, clarity rises like mist lifting from the Leora River at dawn. You begin to discern what drains you and what restores you. You feel when your spirit is off before it spirals. You sense God's whisper in places you once overlooked. And perhaps most importantly, you stop outsourcing your peace. You no longer need a perfect circumstance to feel steady. You become steady because the presence within you remains even when the world shifts. This rhythm is countercultural. The world screams, perform, produce, prove. But God whispers, abide. Abiding doesn't mean idling. It means moving with purpose, born from connection. You can clean the kitchen in rhythm with God, drive to work in rhythm with God, hold tension in a conversation, breathe, and ask silently, God, what do you see here? These are not small acts. They're sacred recalibrations. They say, I'm not alone. I'm not lost. I am being guided. You become sensitive to the shift. Like a musician tuning their ear to a note, you start to sense when you're falling out of rhythm with peace. And you learn to return quickly, not with shame, but with quiet awareness. This is how transformation sticks, not by willpower, but by rhythm. This rhythm also includes rest, that holy underpracticed gift. Rest is not laziness. It is strategic surrender. It says, I trust that the world doesn't spin on my striving. It says, my value is not in what I produce, but in whose I am. Remember the cottage in Leora, where you once collapsed on the porch after a long hike, chest-heaving, muscles aching, but strangely full. That's the kind of rest God offers, not absence of effort, but fullness of presence. God-designed rest heals more than fatigue. It reorders your insides. It lets your soul remember its shape. And in that remembering, a deeper rhythm takes hold. You become less reactive, more responsive. You stop chasing affirmation and start cultivating alignment. You stop apologizing for your spiritual hunger and start nourishing it. And as you keep this rhythm day by day, breath by breath, you start to see something incredible. God is not far. He never was. He walks with you into meetings, into errands, into conflict, into laughter, into sorrow. He whispers not just in prayer rooms, but in grocery aisles. Not just during quiet time, but in loud spaces where clarity is needed. The more you respond to that whisper, the more attuned you become. And soon you don't need fireworks to know you're on the right path. You just feel it. You sense the weight of peace settling over your shoulders like a warm coat. You recognize the nudge in your gut that says slow down, or the one that says say yes, or the quieter one that says let go now. It's time. This is the life of rhythm, not perfection, not religious rigidity, but living in sync with the heart of God. And from that rhythm, your life becomes a beacon, not of performance, but of peace. People will begin to ask you, what changed? Why do you seem lighter, steadier, more alive? And you'll smile not with arrogance, but with deep knowing, because you'll realize you've been walking with God the whole time. He didn't just meet you in crisis. He's been dancing with you through the ordinary. So now say yes, not to doing more, but to walking closer. Let your life move to a new rhythm, one born of rest, of presence, of peace. And as you do, watch what begins to bloom, not all at once, but inevitably. Because when you walk with God, you don't just survive, you flourish. It's been building quietly, not in bright lights or loud applause, but in subtle shifts of your soul, in long, uncelebrated evenings of choosing peace, in silent, sacred mornings when you whispered, "Here I am, God," before the world even noticed you were awake. In the depth of Leora, where no camera ever turned and no headline ever formed the most important change of your life took place, now it's beginning to show. You are stepping into the visible shift, not because you chased it, but because you became it. This is the moment heaven has been preparing you for, not a single event, not a big promotion or a life-changing announcement, but the moment when you finally believe that what has been forming inside you is strong enough to lead your outside life. This is what the shift looks like. You walk into rooms differently now, Not to prove something, but to bring something. You speak with clarity, not because you memorize the right answers, but because your soul is aligned. You hold space for others not as a performance, but because compassion is now part of your rhythm. You no longer ask, "Am I enough for this?" You ask, "Am I being true to who God is forming me to be?" That's a shift, and it's happening now. The same hills that once echoed your loneliness now feel like witnesses. The same trees in Leora that stood silently while you wept now seem to lean in with quiet applause. Heaven isn't introducing a new you, it's unveiling the real you. The one who faced the fire, the one who stayed in the silence, the one who walked through the wilderness and found rhythm again. You never needed a platform to be powerful. You needed presence. And now that presence fills you, you carry it wherever you go. So what happens next? Next is not about acceleration, it's about authenticity. You'll begin to notice opportunities gravitating toward you, not because you pursued them frantically, but because your spirit is magnetic when it's at peace. You'll reconnect with people you thought were gone for good, and the conversations will sound different this time because you are different. Grounded, calm, clear. You'll find yourself saying yes to things that once terrified you, not because fear disappeared, but because faith became louder. The visible shift is not just about new beginnings. It's about new boldness in the old spaces. The job that once drained you becomes a mission field. The family dynamic that once silenced you now becomes a place where your gentle strength rises. You will not need to force it, because God never sends forward what He hasn't first fortified. He has been fortifying you all along. Every unseen battle, every quiet night in Leora. Every time you thought you were going backwards, you weren't. You were being fortified for visibility. Not so the world could be impressed, but so the world could be impacted. Let me say this clearly, God is not preparing you to perform. He is preparing you to transform atmospheres simply by showing up in alignment. That means when you walk into a room, the temperature changes, not because you demand attention, but because you carry peace. When you speak, people listen, not because you shout, but because your words carry depth. When you lead from overflow, not from scarcity. This is not a personality makeover, it's a soul revelation. You're not adding layers, you're peeling them back. You're no longer hiding behind coping mechanisms. You're no longer apologizing for your sensitivity. You're no longer shrinking to fit what others expect. You're standing for real this time. And in doing so, you'll discover something else: your influence is no longer accidental. What once felt like fragmented parts of your identity, your story, your pain, your passions, will now begin to align into a purpose that serves others. You will begin to see how nothing was wasted. The shift is visible because now your alignment is visible. You walk into old spaces with new sight. You notice what's life-giving and what's toxic. You speak up with grace. You step away from chaos. You no longer stay where peace is absent. And here's the beauty: you no longer need to announce the change. The change will speak for itself. People will feel it. They'll wonder why they feel more seen around you. They'll ask what has happened, and all you'll say is, "God healed what was hidden, and now I'm simply living from that healing." This shift is not about leaving Leora behind. It's about carrying what Leora gave you into the wider world. It's not about fame, it's about fruit. And fruit takes time, but fruit also doesn't need to scream. It simply grows. Your life is now bearing fruit others can feed from. Your words carry weight, your eyes carry welcome, your presence carries peace. All of this was cultivated through faithfulness in the shadows, through rhythms learned in stillness, through unseen victories that you honored when no one was clapping. Now you'll begin to walk in rooms where you once felt invisible and realize you are seen, not just by others, but by yourself and by heaven. That kind of recognition doesn't puff up your pride, it roots your purpose. So today you are not being launched, you are being revealed. The layers have been stripped, the truth has been nurtured, the roots have gone deep, and now the world will see what heaven already knows: you are ready. Ready to move with quiet confidence, ready to walk through open doors with holy ease, ready to speak with the weight of experience, not just opinion, ready to lead with integrity and vulnerability, ready to love without losing yourself, ready to live not as a reaction to pain, but as a reflection of purpose. Your visibility will not be about making noise. It will be about making space for others, for healing, for truth. So as this shift becomes more evident, you'll find yourself doing the small things differently. You'll pause before answering. You'll ask, what is true here? You'll trust your discernment. You'll rest when the old you would have pushed. And over time, people will notice not just what you say, but how you carry yourself. You will become the answer to someone else's prayer for steadiness. That's how God works. He heals one person deeply, then sends them into the world as a living testimony. You are that testimony, not perfect, not polished, but present. The shift is not coming, it has come. And now you walk forward not with hype, but with heaven. Which truth resonates most with you today, A? I am ready to be visible in a new, authentic way. B, I still feel the shift happening quietly, but I trust it's real. Comment your answer, A or B, and speak your new season into the open. This is not the end. This is the beginning of your visible purpose. Before you scroll away, take one last breath and let this truth settle deep in your spirit. You didn't find this by chance. This message, this moment, it was set aside for you. You've walked through fire, stood in silence, rebuilt in the dark, and now you're being invited to rise not with noise, but with clarity. So if something stirred inside you today, if a quiet yes echoed through your chest even faintly, don't ignore it. Let that yes become your next step. Comment below and tell us what part of this spoke directly to you. Which moment did you feel most seen? Your words might be the exact encouragement someone else needs today. And if this message touched your heart, share it. Not to promote a video, but to plant a seed. Someone in your life is right where you were. Let them know they're not alone. Let them feel what you just felt. Because when truth is shared, healing multiplies. You were meant to hear this. Now let the world hear it through you.